December 14th, 2023. In one of Colorado's quietest suburban neighborhoods, police responded to what seemed like a simple welfare check. A husband couldn't reach his wife. Nothing looked unusual from the outside. No broken windows. No forced entry. No signs of a struggle. But moments later, officers opened a garage door and discovered a scene that would unravel one of the most carefully planned crimes in recent history. The victim had spent weeks preparing for an attack. She installed security cameras. She trained with firearms. She even hired a private investigator because someone had been threatening her for months. Yet despite all those precautions, the killer still reached her. And what detectives uncovered would reveal that the terrifying stalker everyone feared may never have existed at all. The victim was 43-year-old Crystal Krug, a respected biochemical engineer living in Broomfield, Colorado. Outside of work, she enjoyed restoring classic American muscle cars alongside her father. She also trained as a classical dancer. It was an unusual combination: science, mechanics, and art, but it perfectly reflected who Crystal was. She believed every problem could be solved through careful planning. For 16 years, Crystal had been married to Daniel Krug, a senior official with Colorado's Department of Public Health. Together they appeared to have built the perfect life. A beautiful home. Successful careers. 3 children. From the outside, they looked like the ideal American family. But behind closed doors, reality was very different. By late 2022, the marriage had completely broken down. The couple no longer shared a bedroom. They barely lived as husband and wife. Friends later revealed that Crystal had quietly decided she wanted a divorce. Instead of arguing or creating drama, she handled the situation like every other challenge in her life. She gathered financial records, consulted lawyers, prepared custody plans. Every step was organized long before anyone else realized she was planning to leave. Daniel, however, wasn't willing to accept the end of the marriage. According to people close to the family, he had a strong need to control everything around him. Losing his wife meant losing the carefully built image of a successful family man. As the months passed, the house became emotionally tense. Both continued living under the same roof. But they were no longer partners. They were opponents. Then, just as Crystal prepared to move forward with the divorce, something unexpected happened. In October 2023, Crystal received a shocking message from someone claiming to be Anthony Holland, a man she had briefly known more than 20 years earlier. At first, the messages seemed strange but harmless. Soon they became disturbing. Then they turned into direct threats. The anonymous sender appeared to know exactly where Crystal was going. He mentioned places she had recently visited. He referred to her daily routine. He even commented on details that no stranger should have known. It felt as though someone was watching her every move. Then the threats became even more personal. One day, Crystal received a photograph of Daniel standing outside his workplace. The message warned that her husband would soon be taken care of. Whoever was behind the messages wasn't just sending random threats anymore. They wanted Crystal to believe her family was being hunted. Most people would panic. Crystal didn't. She opened her laptop, created a detailed spreadsheet, recorded every message, every email, every phone number, every date and time. Instead of reacting emotionally, she began building evidence. She was determined to find out who was behind the nightmare. But she had no idea. The truth was much closer than she could ever imagine. Crystal refused to let fear control her life. Instead, she took action. She reported the threats to the police and handed detectives something they rarely receive from a victim: a perfectly organized record of every suspicious message, email, and phone call. The evidence was so detailed that investigators immediately treated the case as serious. Their first question was simple: how did the stalker always know where Crystal was? Officers carefully searched her vehicle. They looked underneath the car for GPS trackers. They inspected the interior. Every hidden compartment was examined. But nothing was found. No tracking device. No hidden camera. No bug. Yet somehow, someone always seemed to know exactly where she had been. As the investigation continued, something unexpected happened inside the Krug household. Daniel's behavior suddenly changed. The same husband Crystal had been preparing to divorce now appeared determined to protect her. He helped install additional security cameras around the house. He checked locks every night. He even kept a heavy baseball bat nearby in case the mysterious stalker ever showed up. For the first time in months, Crystal began relying on Daniel again. The invisible threat had brought the couple back together. It seemed that facing a common enemy had repaired a relationship that was falling apart. Neither Crystal nor the investigators realized that this new sense of safety was exactly what someone wanted her to feel. Meanwhile, detectives focused on the name that kept appearing in the threatening messages. Anthony Holland. He was a real person from Crystal's past. Private investigators tracked addresses connected to him in Utah and Idaho. Everything seemed to point in his direction. Police prepared legal requests for online records that could connect the emails directly to him. But then, a small administrative mistake slowed everything down. One incorrect character in an email address delayed the legal paperwork. The request had to be corrected and submitted again. Days passed, then weeks. Time that investigators didn't know they were losing. While police waited for digital evidence, the person behind the threats continued moving freely. Then, December 14th arrived. Daniel was at work when he called emergency services. He calmly explained that his wife wasn't answering her phone. He asked officers to check on the house. But there was something unusual about the call. Even before police entered the home, even before anyone knew what had happened, Daniel repeatedly mentioned one specific name: Anthony Holland. It sounded as though he already believed the stalker was responsible. Officers rushed to the house. Inside the garage, they found Crystal lying on the floor. She had not survived. Investigators immediately believed the stalker had finally carried out his threats. A multi-state investigation began. Police in Utah quickly located Anthony Holland. Everything pointed toward an arrest. But within hours, the entire case collapsed. Security cameras from a large retail store showed Anthony calmly shopping hundreds of miles away at the exact time Crystal was attacked. His purchase receipt matched the surveillance footage perfectly. There was no possible way he could have committed the crime. The man everyone believed was the killer was completely innocent. That changed everything. Detectives suddenly realized they had been chasing someone who had nothing to do with the case. If Anthony wasn't responsible, then who had created months of terrifying messages? And more importantly, who benefited the most from making everyone believe a dangerous stalker existed? The investigation was about to take a dramatic turn. And this time, the evidence would point somewhere no one expected. Once Anthony Holland's alibi was confirmed, detectives had no choice but to start over. The investigation took a complete turn. Instead of searching for an unknown stalker, they began asking a different question: who had the most to gain from creating one? That question led investigators to Daniel Krug. The spreadsheet she created became the investigation's roadmap. Every message, every timestamp, every email address, every detail helped detectives rebuild the timeline. The first breakthrough came from the email records. Forensic experts analyzed the original email headers and traced the internet connections used to send the threatening messages. The results were surprising. The emails had been sent using a public guest Wi-Fi network. But it wasn't a coffee shop. It wasn't a hotel. It wasn't a public library. The Wi-Fi belonged to the Colorado Department of Public Health, the very building where Daniel worked every day. At first, investigators remained cautious. A public network could have been used by anyone. But the network logs told a different story. At the exact moments the threatening emails were sent, only one device was connected to that access point. The unique MAC address matched Daniel's personal smartphone. The anonymous stalker and Daniel's phone were in the same place every single time. That discovery changed the investigation completely. Then detectives uncovered another critical piece of evidence. The anonymous phone calls had been made from a prepaid burner phone. Whoever bought it had tried to stay anonymous, but the phone account had been recharged using a $50 Walmart gift card. Police subpoenaed Walmart's records and identified the exact transaction. Security cameras from the store captured the purchase. Standing at the checkout counter, buying the gift card, was Daniel Krug. Without realizing it, he had paid for the very phone used to terrorize his own family. By now, investigators believed they were seeing the full picture. But one final clue removed any remaining doubt. Earlier, Crystal had received a photograph showing Daniel standing outside his office. The anonymous sender claimed someone had secretly been watching him. Forensic experts examined the photo itself. Hidden inside the image metadata was the answer. The picture hadn't been taken by a stranger at all. It had been captured using the phone's built-in timer. Detectives concluded that Daniel simply placed his phone on a nearby surface, walked into position, waited for the countdown, and photographed himself. He then sent the image to Crystal as proof that someone was following him. The mysterious stalker, the frightening threats, even the evidence, had all been carefully staged. Everything pointed toward one person. Daniel wasn't protecting his family from danger. According to investigators, he had created the danger himself. But detectives still needed to answer one final question. If Daniel had invented the imaginary stalker, how did Crystal lose her life? The answer would come from search history, security cameras, and one carefully planned morning. With the digital evidence pointing directly at Daniel, investigators focused on reconstructing the final 24 hours before Crystal's death. What they uncovered suggested careful planning rather than a sudden act. On the evening before the crime, investigators found an internet search made from Daniel's device asking a disturbing question about how much force could render someone unconscious. To detectives, it appeared to show preparation. The following morning, Crystal left home to take the children to school. Daniel stayed behind. A nearby security camera later captured him returning to the front entrance. Investigators believe he covered one of the home's exterior security cameras with blue painter's tape and disabled the alarm system, removing the very protections he had helped install. When Crystal returned home, she entered through the garage as she normally did. According to prosecutors, she was attacked before she had a chance to defend herself. Although she had a loaded handgun inside her purse, she never managed to draw it. Investigators also determined that text messages sent from Crystal's phone after her death had likely been scheduled in advance to create the impression that she was still alive. Digital analysis showed the phone remained motionless when those messages were delivered, supporting the theory that they were automated rather than typed at that moment. There was another mystery. When Daniel appeared later that day, witnesses said his clothing looked clean. Prosecutors argued that during a period when the dashboard camera in his vehicle had been turned off, he likely disposed of evidence and changed into an identical set of clothes he had prepared beforehand. On December 16, 2023, officers arrested Daniel Krug. As he was taken into custody, he reportedly made a calm remark about whether he or someone else would tell his children what had happened to their mother. The investigation also uncovered something deeply unsettling from Daniel's past. A former college girlfriend told detectives that years earlier, after their relationship ended, he had allegedly carried out a remarkably similar campaign of fake accounts, anonymous messages, and intimidation. To investigators, it suggested that creating fear to maintain control was not a new idea, it was a pattern. The case eventually went to trial. Prosecutors presented digital records, surveillance footage, phone data, internet activity, and witness testimony to build their timeline. The defense challenged parts of the evidence, but after hearing the case, the jury reached its decision. In April 2025, Daniel Krug was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with an additional prison term on related charges. For Crystal's family, however, no verdict could undo what had been lost. Her children were left to grow up without their mother. In the years that followed, Crystal's brother began advocating for proposed legislation known as Crystal's Law. The goal is to improve the speed at which technology companies respond to urgent law enforcement requests for digital records, reducing delays in cases involving credible threats. Crystal Krug did everything she believed would keep herself and her family safe. She documented every threat. She strengthened her home's security. She sought professional help. She reported everything to police. Yet this case serves as a reminder that sometimes the greatest danger is not the one outside the walls, but the one hidden behind a familiar face.